So now we're going to look at doing some texturing, some shading on a character, and this is going to be a bit of a Photoshop method. And I have my Impmon character that we worked on before. If we look at our UV texture editor, we'll see we have our head UVs all in one space. This is the inside of the mouth, and this is the head all connected together. We're going to have to look at the edges here, the seams here, and make sure that we can seamlessly merge this side with this side. Let's do a UV snapshot. What you'll notice is that the UV snapshot puts the texture into the images folder, and it's called out UVs. So I don't actually want this in the images folder. I want this to be in my source images, because that's where, when I create a shader, it automatically goes to. And I'll create a new folder, and I'm gonna call this Impmon texture create, and I'm gonna call this Impmon head. I think naming conventions are extremely important. So you might have, in a film, you might have 10 characters. So if one is Impmon, one is Pokemon, or whatever mon you have, you might want to give each texture its own name. So Impmon and then head. If you just call it head and then you have 6 characters with heads, it's not going to be easy to find what you're looking for. So give it a name, Impmon and then head. Alright? And eventually, so right now this is 124. You might want to go to 248 because 2048, because the head, it's always easier to start out big and make it smaller than it is to start out small and make it bigger. And we can do a JPEG, and we say source images, Impmon texture, Impmon head. Okay. And now I'm going to take this and I'm going to open it up in Photoshop. So I go to Photoshop here. I guess I could just open it. And so my projects, source images, Impmon head, Impmon texture, boom. Alright, let's open this up. Now, you'll see that it's a white line on a black background. Depending on what color our character is, we might want to invert this. And in fact, I do want to invert this. Invert is image adjustments invert, or Command I. Okay. Next, what I want to do is I want to, let's just go here, import Impmon color, because I'm going to be using the color from here on my character, for my character. So I'll go here. Now, with this, I'm going to have to make the choice, the color choice. What color is this character? Okay. So in light, it's light purple. In darkness, in shadow, it's dark purple. Alright. Sometimes a character like this, you can actually find the model color sheet on the internet if they've posted it, and you can use that color for the character. In this, hopefully in RGB. So in this case, I'm going to use a color picker right here. So I for ink drop, and I'm going to select the light purple color, and that's going to come up here. And I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to fill that layer. I can just press Option Delete. I'm using a Macintosh, or if I want, I can go to Edit and Fill and say foreground color. And that could also do it. Okay. I will also be using white and black, but those are pretty obvious what they are. So now I have this as my base color right here. I need to now put my UV mesh right here as a guide over my color layer, and I'm going to call this base color. Now it's always good to give names to your layers. So this could be reference, and we can just turn it off and maybe even put it over here. This one could be called UV. Alright, now I can't see through it. What do I need to do? I just need to use a blending mode called multiply. And now I can see that my UV is where they each are at, and I'm going to now put the white where I need it, because if we look at the face, you see here we have some white going on. So let's go back to Impmon, the 3D, and let's look at where do I want the edge to be. It looks like it's this third line right here. Let's make sure in my texture editor I know exactly which one it is. So it's the second line here. You can kind of see it. So inside of here, I can zoom in, and I prefer, personally, I like to use the pen tool for something like this, and I want this to be white. And I'm going to go in here and I'm going to follow this with the pen tool. And I'm just going to get the basic shape here with the pen tool. This is a pretty graphic character, so I'm going to just, use a solid for now. And now I can, that was really rough, I can go in here and I can just really just touch this up, make sure I'm exactly where I want to be. Sometimes my brain starts to think in the shortcuts of Maya and not the shortcuts of Adobe, so I have to be careful of that. Okay, just go in here. Okay. Okay. Okay, we can call this white face. Alright. Now, of course, what do we need to do next? We need to do the black around the eyes. Again, we can refer back to this part right here. UV texture editor. Okay, it's this outer line right there, which is pretty easy. going to be black. And I might want to just make this 50% gray. I press the 5 button here. By pressing this one, we can call this I5 is 50% gray. And before we move on, let's just look at our reference right here. And you see it's kind of sharpish at the edges. So let's see how. Go in here, but not too sharp. So I want to go my pen tool. I need my convert point. Just something like that. We can test it out a little bit later. Okay, so now I also have the nose, which is black. Alright, so we can go in here. We can call this right eye. It's always good to name it and create a new layer. And again, I'm just gonna stick with my pen tool. If you want, all of this could be just painted if you want. And then we go in here and we we can call this nose. Now, a couple of things. One, we need to bring this back to full black, 0, 0, 0. Okay. Next, what we need to do is let's take all of these and let's put this into a group. My mouse is acting crazy. Alright, and I'm going to call this group color. Alright, and it's important to keep this. I don't want my UVs in there. Okay, so this is going to be my color, and now I'm going to save this as a PSD, Impmon head PSD, Photoshop. Alright, now I'm just going to test this out. What does it look like? What's it going to look like? And I'm going to call this color, Impmon head color, because this is my base layer. I'm going to test this out on my actual character. Okay. Now I go to Window, Hypershade, and I'm going to create a MI material. We're going to use Mental Ray for this, and we can do Mia X. Alright, now I don't want reflection turned on, so I'm going to turn off reflectivity. I'm going to go to Diffuse Color, File, and I'm going to import this in Impmon Texture Color, Head Color, boom. Alright, and then of course I need to, let's give this a name, Impmon Head MIA. Okay, Mental Images, Architectural Shader, even though it's an organic character. And here we go. We're getting, so now we see what it's like. If it was like gray like this, you press 6 and that should show. And this follows those contours very nicely. This is looking okay. Okay, the nose is quite dark. We have the lips. We have the inside of the mouth that we want to deal with. Alright, so that's just the base. That's the base. Alright. What we can do next is we can start looking for some images. We can either paint it or we can actually just layer on some more texture in the color. And we might want to do a couple of things. We want to do the color map, but we might also want to do a bump map. All right. So we'll just end this part here, and we'll do part 2 where we'll add in some bump maps and some more colors. So we're going to continue with the texture on this, and we're going to do both a color map and a bump map in this case. So in Maya, in Autodesk, they have the area, which is a great resource for everything Maya, including textures. And I downloaded this texture right here, leather grain, and I'm imagining that Impmon is kind of like this leathery character, a leathery demon character. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to go into Photoshop, and I'm going to grab the texture right here, and I'm going to pull this over here. And you'll notice that I have it here. So scale of the leather is important. If I just scale it up like this, then those bumps are huge compared to my character. So I actually don't really like it scaled up. So I'm going to paste it in again. Now, there are different ways to do this, but we can go like this. And what's important to see about this texture is you don't see seams. So when you're choosing the texture for your character, if you can find seamless textures, that'll be very helpful. Let's go on, and I can take these two and I can just merge them together. Command E merges them together. And I want to maybe move it over here and do this again. Just make sure that you have no seams. Okay. Command E merges these down. Alright, and now I can duplicate this again, merge it down, make sure that there's no seam. I can see a little bit of a seam. Alright, there we go. We don't want seams if possible. So let's pull this one up. You'll notice that there is a little bit of a tileable feeling. You can kind of tell that it's all one. You can see some lines here, and that's the problem with tileable textures, that they do have patterns that kind of tend to emerge. Let's just go like this. Alright, so I'm going to call this leather. Okay, now this is black leather. I could do now I can do a few things with this leather. I can duplicate it, because this is going to be my color, and I could colorize it so that it's the purple that I'm looking for, and maybe lighten it a little bit. Okay, and I can compare this purple to this one, and you see it's pretty close. Alright, so I already took the time and energy to map out this color right here for the face, right? Or I have this face, but now you see I have the nice leather texture right here. I have some seams where the white face is right here. So now I have to make a decision. Do I want the whole face and eyes and everything to be this leather texture, or do I want it to be something different? Do I want the inside of this to be a little bit different? If I look here, I have a kind of creature scale texture that I got from, this is from a DVD of textures, and let's just choose something like this. Alright, I'm going to pull this in, and I'm going to use this for the face, and I'm going to copy it and paste it in here. And again, look at the scale. I don't want this to be this huge, huge, huge face here, so I might scale this down quite a bit. I want this to be, so we can go, this is called leather copy. I might call this purple leather, right? And now I have this leather face right here. Okay, we'll rename this later. And let's just try this scale right here. Again, the fact that this is a tileable texture is quite good. I'll just keep moving it until it kind of fills the space, and I'll just merge this down, Command E, Command E, Command E, and then I'm going to merge. I'm going to go down again, and I'll go up one. And I'm going to go down, down. Alright. Maybe move this up. So I want this to be the same size as the white face here. Alright. Now, what you'll see though is it's not the same shape. So there's a lot of things we can do, but in this case, maybe I'm just going to give it a, what we call a mask right here. Alright. So this mask allows me to cut out the face right there. Now it's a little bit too dark, so I can either just change the opacity so that it's barely there, like 10% or something, or I can try to multiply this on top, and then I might want to, now before I go too far with adjusting this, because I have this, I'm going to call this white face texture. Okay. I'm going to want to use this for my bump map also. So before I move on, let's duplicate this before I start making any big changes. And I'm going to put it up here, and I'm going to turn it off. And this is going to be probably used in my bump map. Alright, so now I'm going to adjust the levels here, and I'm going to make the white whiter, or the gray more of a white. And I'm going to, it's still too strong, so then I can maybe just add a little bit of opacity. Okay. Alright. If I want to, I could actually color this just a little bit. Give it a tinting, not blue, maybe in the purple spectrum. Yeah, so it's giving that a purple spectrum right there. Alright. It might be too strong. We'll see. We'll see. We can always, right now it's opacity 20. Actually, let's bring it down to 10. Okay. Alright. Now, the only thing left is the nose and the eyes. So, what would the eyes be made out of? This part of the eyes. Will it be the same texture? If so, maybe we can just take it, the same texture, and now put it up above, and let's get rid of this layer mask, delete, and I'm going to create a new layer mask using the right eye, and we're going to import that over. You can see that. And it's still on multiply, so we're not going to see anything. So let's try overlay and see what that looks like. Overlay isn't showing. Let's try screen mode. There we go. You can see a little bit of this. And let's try to bring it up a little bit. That's 30%, too much. Maybe 20%, and maybe even 15. We don't want it to be too strong. We just want a subtle texture going on there. All right. And let's keep that for the nose too. So where's my nose at? There it is. And I'm going to add that to the layer mask. I'm going to bring this up. And eye for the layer mask. And you can see subtly that texture on everything here. Alright. Now, I have a few other issues I might want to look at. Along this line right here, that's where a seam is going to be. And we'll look at the seam in Maya first. Let's save this. File, save. Now that we have a texture, we're going to go to head, color. We're going to save it as Impmon head color again. Replace it. And let's update this in Maya. Alright. Reload it. And now you're going to see this texture on there. Alright? And let's look at the seams and see if there's a problem. It's not too bad, actually. The seams on the head, it's looking pretty good. It's pretty hard to see. You can see it right here. You can see the seam, but it's not that bad. So that's the kind of thing that we're going to have to look at. Alright, under, like, seams here, you see a little bit of stretching going on, not too bad. Okay, that seam right there. So we will have to look at this. Alright? But now we've created this texture. This texture right here might be a little bit too strong because we're going to add a bump map, and when you add a bump map, so this already has highlights and it already has shadows. So that's a problem. We might want to lessen that in the color and just emphasize that in the bump map only, or more so. Okay? So let's actually go back here, but it's looking pretty good. And okay, go back to our color map here, and our purple leather. Let's bring down the opacity to, let's say, 50%, or maybe even 30%. Okay, so we go, save, file, save as, Photoshop color, right here, save, replace. Okay, and again, reload, and that's going to be less so. Okay. So before we move on to some details, so I want to actually create some seams. I want to like fix these problems with the seams. Before we move on there, let's see what happens with a bump map. Now before we do that, maybe we need to set up our rendering, which, alright, so how do we set up our render? Let's render this thing out and see what it's going to look like when I render it with this software, with Mental Ray. So the first thing I want to do is open my render settings, and we're using Mental Ray, so let's use indirect lighting, and in this case I want to use final gathering and image based lighting. So I press create. I go to from image file. This is my image-based lighting. You'll see here I've got this sphere, this globe, and I want to go from image file to texture. If I want, I could use a HDRI image. In this case, I'm just going to go pretty simple, and I want to just make this kind of 50% gray. The reason is I'm going to actually add a light in here for a highlight, and let's see. So let's render this out and see what it looks like. Alright, it's kind of small, so we need to maybe fix our settings. So let's render this out full. Alright, and the good thing about Final Gathering is we're getting this nice occlusion automatically in there. Actually, now that I look at it, I want to like fix this part a little bit, make this a little sharper. Bring this in. It feels too big. I want to bring this part in, and the texture here is okay. It's not too strong. We can't really see the texture on here, but as we add in some lighting, I think we're going to get some, and a bump map, we're going to see that we're going to pull this detail out a little bit more. Also, the size of this texture feels too big, so I want to go in there and I'm going to resize some of this stuff. Alright, so before I even take the time to do a bump map, let's go in and let's do some changes. Let's go back here. So this is the white face texture. Alright, and I'm going to uncouple these two, and I'm going to say Command T. I don't want Thai language. And I'm going to make it smaller. It was just too big. It just didn't feel like natural. It was natural. Alright, go here, and I'm going to duplicate. We can even remove this thing right here. Remove this again, delete, and let's turn off multiply. And you'll see here what this is a workflow. It's the first time you do it, it might not look good. So you have to keep looking at it and testing it and seeing if you're happier with the size. Alright, let's go here. Okay. And let's merge those together. Alright. Now, I have this white face texture right here. And again, I'll go back and I'll pull this down. And I'm going to move it here. And I'm not going to use this one. Let's duplicate it first. So one is going to be used for bump maps. And I got to keep that one up here. And one of them, I'll turn it off. And one of them is going to be used for the color map. So I have this right here. I can select this, and put it there. Delete. And let's colorize it again. Command U, colorize. Let's give it that purple-ish color. Now the blacks are just black, so I want to lighten those up a bit. Okay. And I'm going to multiply again and bring down the opacity just to 20% or 10%. Okay. Okay. So now if you look here, the size here and the size here are different. Let's keep the big size for the eye and the small size for the face here. Alright. So that means we're gonna, okay, so now we're gonna move on to the bump map. We have the leather here, we have the eyes, and we have the face. Now, what I can do is I can take my color, let's save this first, and I can duplicate this whole group, and now I'm going to call it bump. So all of my color is here, all of my bump is here, and I can get rid of stuff that I do not want. Alright, now how does bump work? Bump works where anything above 50% gray is up, so white is up, and anything black or lower than 50% gray is dark. Is below when I'm doing a bump map. So let's bring down this white face. This is in my bump, and I want to connect this to this one right here. Alright, I'm going to get rid of this. Alright, so let's start off with 50% gray. Let's turn everything off that I'm not working on right now. Turn off this, 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 this. Alright, so this is my base color. Let's start the base color at 50% gray. We can do that by filling 50% gray. Alright, and now I have my leather here. Now I don't need it to be purple anymore, so let's just desaturate the image right here, and I can make it a little darker, 50%, 60%, 70%, 80%, 100%. Let's make it 80%. Okay, so now I have that base layer, and I have my white face here, texture. This is just a bump map. So dark is going to go down, light is going to go, or gray is up. So I think it's probably a little bit too dark. So sometimes I like to, we don't need this one. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll keep just a backup copy because I don't know if it's going to work or not. So I go here, let's go to levels, and let's make it just a little bit lighter. And this will bump this out too. Alright, so next we have the left eye and right eye right here. And we can make this 100%. And we're going to desaturate it, Command-Shift U. And we don't want it so bright. Let's make it and we want to turn off screen mode. So there we go. Now I have these different layers of bump map. I'm going to press save. So I have a color layer, I have a bump map layer. Okay, save the Photoshop. I'm going to save as the color file, save as Impmon color, save, replace, and now I'm going to save the bump map. Photoshop, file, and I'm going to give it head bump. So by naming each one of these, it's very easy to stay organized. I have color map, I have a bump map. I go back to Maya, and now I'm going to import my bump map in. File. See, bump map here. Alright. Look at the two. Now, a lot of times the bump depth of one is too strong. Let's just do 0.1. Okay. And let's render this out. Let's see what this is going to look like. Alright, so this is my, you can see some bump map coming along here, but it's not so strong. And the reason is, what we need to do here is, let's add in a light. Let's create a light. Just one spotlight. All we need is one light. And with this light right here, let's set it up, look through selected. Let's kind of give some direction to the lighting. Now, my image-based lighting is 50% gray. This light right here is intensity 1. If you go over intensity of 1, so 1 plus 0.5, which is the intensity of the image-based lighting, that's 1.5, it's going to get burned out. So let's pull this to 0.5. So 0.5 plus 0.5, if you look at this value, actually I can make it exactly 0.5, then we have 1. Alright, let's render this out. It should be a lot brighter. And now you can see the effects of the bump map. And I'm feeling like the bump map on the face is much too strong. I kind of like that subtle in the blacks here, the subtle look of the texture in the black, but for the white, way too strong. So what I need to do is I need to go in here and I need to fix particularly that right there. And what's happening is it's just too strong. So I'm going to go, let's do the levels, and I'm just going to kind of even this out so that it's a bit more, just 50% gray. Let's see how that looks. Alright, and let's save as, JPEG, bump, save, replace, okay. Go back to here, go back to our hypershade. We want to keep this image just so we can reference it, and let's reload the bump map. And let's render that out and see what it looks like. Ah, looking much better. So it's not overwhelming. So you look at that and you look at that. This is overwhelming. I think this, a more subtle kind of bump is looking good. Alright, so I think that's good enough for just how to do a basic color map and bump map. We're going to do details later next, and the details are what's going to make this look good. Because right now it's just okay. But we'll look in. Let's add in some details to this character here. Well, let's start off by bringing in some stitches. So I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna say stitches texture, and I get some great images coming up in Google, and I kind of like this leather one right here. So I'm gonna visit page, and this should be able to work for me. So I'm going to save image as, and I'm going to go to my projects folder, 3D design, source images, Impmon texture, and I'm going to call this stitches. Alright. Alright. So let's take those stitches and let's pull them into Photoshop. So what's good about this is it has contrast between the white and the dark here, and we can use that for both a color map and for a bump map. So let's add this in. We'll call this stitches. Alright. And what we're going to do is we actually want to get rid of detail that we don't want to use. Let's go in here. Let's do some feathering on here. Let's do like 30. Maybe 10. Alright. And we're going to darken. Actually, let's keep it the way it is. Alright, let's use this right here. Alright. I kind of like that line in the middle. At first I was thinking I might change it. Alright, so let's open up our UV and let's look at where we might have our stitches. Let's lock this UV. Grab our... Alright. So one really good place to begin would be wherever there's a seam here. So I might want to like pull this over here, and I can add this over here, and I can build this seam all the way around. Now it's going to take me quite a lot of time to do this. There are other easier ways to do this. For example, you could create a Photoshop brush to draw these stitches, and you could just paint this line yourself. You could use Mudbox, which is a program that comes with Autodesk, that you can get from Autodesk, and works very well with Maya. So what I'll do is I'll just patch this thing up, and then we're going to talk about how it looks. Alright, so now we have this stitching around this part, and what can we do here? We can change to overlay. It's a mode, and you see it's purple here, but actually we can get rid of this. We can go here and we can lighten it up until it has just a little bit of discoloration. So we got some small problems here. We can fix that later. But what we can do now is we can save this as a color map, JPEG. Place it. And I can take that same stitches copy and I can pull it into my bump map now. And you see it kind of just easily works in there because I'm using that blend mode. So I can now file, save as JPEG, bump map, and replace it. Okay. And let's go to Maya and let's reload these two. Okay. And let's move the angle a little bit so we can actually see it. Render that out. And now you can see those seams are kind of added in there. Now there are other ways to deal with seams, but I would say for this Impmon, and again we can fix some small little problems in there, but this is looking pretty good. That's looking pretty good. Let's see what it looks like from this view. So I like that. I think it's kind of cool looking. It's giving a little bit of detail in here that just is going to bring this to life. I could do that with the tail, and in fact I would do that all the way around here and maybe even around here just to give it, this is 3D, we should give it a little bit more life. So let's look at one more thing. We can look at the texture here and we can see how the texture has been updated, and I've added details around the eyes here. I've got some details around the eyes here, details here, some details along there, and it's looking okay. But in reality, if you think about leather, it's actually quite a reflective material. It doesn't reflect like a mirror, but it has specularity to it. So let's look at what happens if we turn on reflection. Let's go all the way and let's just turn on. Now let's note that this reflection does have the BRDF with a 0-degree reflection value of 0.2, which I think works well with the leather. But let's do a render with the reflection turned on. And what you're going to notice is that everything here is just too reflective, and it loses it. It doesn't feel like leather. It feels like some magic material that is just purely reflective, almost like completely wet. And that's not what we want. We don't want reflections to be everywhere. So let's save this one. So what we do is we create what we call a reflection map. Now, how do I create my reflection map? I just take my bump map, duplicate it, change the name to reflection map, and I have this black and white image here. Now, just to save time for this tutorial, I've already created one of these, and I deleted the stitches, because the stitches in general, the stitches are not going to be reflective. It's just a cotton cloth, so they shouldn't have a reflectance value. Now how does a reflection map work? A reflection map is anything white is reflective, anything black is not reflective. And I want to have these nice specular highlights on the leather. But look at this face, it's almost white. And the face is a white leather. I don't need it to be that reflective. So I need to go in here and I need to change that. So I have the white face texture here. And I'm just going to change the values from white to dark, because I want there just to be a little bit of reflection. And the same thing with the eyes. I don't want it to be so reflective in the darks. Maybe I want a little bit more reflection in the lights, but something like that. And then same thing with the leather. I want it to have more of a contrast between the reflection and the highlights and the crevices. Okay, so I'm making my reflection map quite a bit darker, and I say Impmon head, and I call this Impmon head reflection. Okay, let's save this. Let's move over to Maya. And now, where do we input this into in our, we go to, here's diffuse, here's reflection. Our reflection is turned on. We're going to go to color, and we're going to add the map to the color. Alright, you could call it reflect or reflection. Alright, and now, so what you'll see in our node tree here is you'll see a color map, input, a bump map, and now a reflection map. And the reflection map, anything dark is not going to reflect. So for example, another good way to look at it is inside of this crevice right here between the stitches, right now it's reflecting at a 100% value. Actually, that shouldn't be reflective. That's where all the dirt gets. Dirt is not reflective. So let's try and render this out and see what happens. So you'll see here we're getting some nice specular highlights on the leather without that overall washing out of the reflection. Just wait, let it finish. Yeah, you see these little things? And that BRDF means it's only reflecting in a certain direction. So look at this, where it's all burned out and washed out, and this. So, and here is no reflection, full reflection, and a reflection, which I think looks far superior. I can actually delete this one, and let's even compare this one to this one. And you can see it just has more of a leathery feel to it. And now there's still details on the nose we can do. We should probably look at the lips a little bit. I think my teeth could be more reflective. So there's more details that I can work on, including even making the leather a little bit dirtier if I wanted to. But I would say maybe next we can look at the eye.